what does good mean anymore in this industry that we're in? This kind of definition of good. What is good technology? How do we use technology for good? All of you are part of that in different ways, and that's what I wanted to kind of get to first. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us on another episode of Tech Unscripted, here where we have really one agenda, and that is to bring together really interesting leaders from really interesting companies to talk about what we hope will be a really interesting topic. I think we've got a really meaty one today around the definition of good in the world we're living in now around technology. And so I am really, really pleased and really grateful to be joined by four panelists, experts all in their own field. Quick introductions: Elliot Dirksen, distinguished engineer from Grayson Technologies. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We have Gus Leon Delgado, senior project manager at Emerson. We have Andrea Boneschi, solutions architect from Trustmark Ultima. And finally, Chris Spencer, CTO of Cincinnati Children's Hospital. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it, and hope we have some fun today. Let's get into it. We have, I think, what is one of the more interesting, timely topics around the idea of what does good mean anymore in this industry that we're in, this kind of definition of good. What is good technology? How do we use technology for good? How do the people that in our sphere see the good in technology? And all of you are part of that in different ways. And that's what I wanted to kind of get to first. Let's start with maybe the more straightforward. Technology and its application to the business. And maybe just wanted to hear a story from each of you, or a recent example of where you've done something, led something where you've seen technology really have a material business impact, something that you can go and explain to anyone in the company and they're going to say, I get that. Yes, I agree with that. And maybe Chris, I'll start with you and we'll work our way down.
Yeah, I think for us, it's obviously in the business of treating children in pediatrics. And I think it's very different to have an adult medicine versus pediatrics and finding ways that kids can relate. And so I think what we've found is that most kids relate to digital avatars. They've got the Roblox, they've got the Fortnite. So we've been able to create a digital twin using the appropriate avatars that we can then engage kids on a much different level. We use that for all kinds of pre and post-op, for clinical care, for research studies, for epileptic patients. And so I think we've had a lot of success, and we look forward to expanding that so we can extend our reach to kids all over the world. And we can start to treat them now on a much broader perspective, using technologies that they can relate to on a daily basis.
That's amazing. A super inspiring use case, and one that, I think anyone can kind of see the application of technology there. I want to hear from you three, because I think you're coming from a place where sometimes it may not be so obvious. I can relate to this a little bit. So I think we all run technology. I run the marketing technology stack for Cisco, and I know sometimes it can feel a little bit like we get noticed only when something goes sideways. So I'd love to hear from you three. Same question: what's a recent example of something that really sticks out? An example of a technology being put to really impactful commercial use business.
Well, actually, I will expand on what you were saying regarding anything that's infrastructure. And as I do a lot of network infrastructure, it's very interesting work, but your point is spot on that these days the expectation is, 24/7, 365, and anything less than that, and people are looking at you like, why are you here? For me, and I'm still doing hands-on field work, for me, I've really enjoyed being able to troubleshoot problems and finding things where, maybe other people have tried to find the solution to something and being able to solve a problem. That's a big payoff for me. So it's not necessarily technology, but it revolves around technology.
Yeah, and there's something I think really profound in that about what we can bring as technologists to the business. Sometimes it is unseen or unseen yet. I think that's a really important point in this, is that the good can be about preventative. It could be about diagnostic. It could be about the things that keep something from going sideways and advance. Thank you, Elliot. Gus, what about for you?
Well, I'm more in the industrial side with Emerson, but something that strikes me is that within our teams, we have certain fear to adopt AI, and we're tackling that through a lot of training, mentoring. I like that because there was a lot of scaredness within the company and my teams because they felt it was going to take their jobs away. And I think the approach we have to have for this is that it's a tool, certainly, but it doesn't have the final word. It's us that give that final word, and we have to understand and be more sensible to what that's bringing to humanity, to our communities, and to the world, because it's important to never lose that front that the human side is always more important than what comes with AI.
It's a big theme right now. Well, we're going to come back to this one. So I want to hear from you, Andrea, and we're going to come back to this theme in a moment.
So I think my three colleagues have already covered majority of the points. I want to go a bit deeper into the technical part. We use technology to improve workspaces, especially on the security, on the agility, on the resiliency, because behind every network, there are businesses, there are schools, there are banks, there are hospitals. And when a network goes down, an hospital might lose connectivity. When a place is not secure, a malware might stop services to be accessed. And this is not just a technical impact, it's a human impact.
Yeah, let's jump off, since both of you kind of alluded to this. Let's go right in on it. We are at such an interesting moment, because I think that the definition of good is changing right before our eyes. I think we've all kind of grown up in a world where good technology was technology that was secure, it was resilient, it was reliable. Those are all still true. But I think even in the last year, we've seen the definition start to become, you mentioned it, become about speed, agility, and autonomy, which is different and kind of conjures different things. So maybe we'll go backwards this time. Andrea, starting with you. When you start to think about how would you define good technology? Maybe we put it in the context of, say, you brought up security. What's your definition of good now for security within the company?
We want to allow employees to do their job properly without thinking about which technology they are using. Technology must be transparent for people. I'm thinking about a nurse, a lawyer. They don't have to be security expert to use the technology. They just have to be able to consume the services they need.
What about for you, Gus?
I agree with him that it's important in transparency. We shouldn't forget that we have the creativity within us. AI doesn't have that part. Plus, we have the feelings. So at the end of the day, it's our say how we want that to work toward what we're doing in our workplaces. So I think it's important to never forget that we have to trust what AI is giving us, but we have to always verify, because that's where it starts.
Yes, I'm reminded of a favorite saying of an older relative, but the comment was you shouldn't have to have a master's degree and shovel to dig a ditch. So when you have technology that's supporting some kind of business process, you'd like to think that it is relatively transparent, as Andrea mentioned. In other contexts, maybe that's more forward if you're doing scientific research or something like that. So it's very context sensitive, but since a lot of what I think we all do revolves around supporting some kind of business process, but yeah, it should, in a relatively non-obvious way, just aid somebody to get something done. It's an extension or a support of a business process.
Right. So I heard transparency, I heard creativity, I heard this idea of being almost kind of seamless, right? Like that it's an easy adjunct to what we're already doing. And then Chris, I'll come to you.
Yeah, I take a little different perspective, because I think there has to be a balance. If it's overly secure, it's not functional. If it's too functional, it's not secure. And I think I work with my security colleagues all the time to find that balance. I think Cincinnati Children's operates really two different organizations, one in the research space and one in the clinical care space. And those two have to be handled a lot differently. I think adding too much layer of complexity and adding too much layer of security, we would limit ourselves in drug discovery, clinical trials, research, We have a long history of being the first of many different vaccines and different medical treatments that are developed in the pediatric world. So I think we pride ourselves on that, but we also don't want to limit ourselves on that by adding too much layer of complexity. But I think in the clinical space, yes, we define good as improving child outcomes around the globe and around the world, and we want to continue to do that. And that's why Cisco, being a huge partner of ours, allows us to do that. We would not be as successful as we are without great partnerships like Cisco and many others. So it's a balance act, and I think we've done very good at finding that right balance, but it is a lot quicker than it has been in the past. Where in the healthcare, you never want to be bleeding edge, but I think we are approaching that just to continue to improve outcomes and find new discoveries.
Yeah. I think I want to come back to this speed point, but not miss a couple of points. One, we are equally grateful to all of you for the partnership. Thank you. And that's the way we always think about it with our customers. It is a true partnership and collaboration, so appreciate that. Also wanted to go back to, Gus, you brought up such an interesting word, creativity. It's not one that we often, when we do these kind of technology conversations, that word doesn't come up that often. And so I wanted to kind of pause on that for a minute, because the first example that you shared, Chris, was, I thought, really creative. And more specifically, I think it came from this place of thinking from the outside in, right? Thinking about your patient, thinking about children, thinking about the kind of the world that they're occupying, how are they interacting with technology, and then kind of flip it around and think about how can we reach them through those technologies, which I think is a brilliant example of creativity applied to the technology. So maybe I'd love to go kind of back around and hear from all of you around, this AI thing. One of the cool things about it is kind of imagine anything now, right? Like we're seeing people build things that are mind-blowing. So creativity is definitely on the menu. So as you think about art of the possible, what could we potentially do that maybe we couldn't do even a year or 2 years ago? What are some of the things that maybe you're envisaging?
Well, so the one thing that I'll say as it pertains to AI, when you've got, idle GPUs sitting there, it's not deciding, okay, I think I'm going to sit down and write a love sonnet. It doesn't have that kind of creativity. You still need someone to drive that. And I think AI can make that happen more quickly. But even thinking back to different things I've done, I'm in network infrastructure now, but I used to do program analyst stuff. But sometimes getting a perspective from somebody that's either newer or outside of the area you work in can have a very unique perspective. And it's interesting how you can get, kind of a little mired in this is the way we've always done it. And then sometimes it takes somebody with a different perspective.
Is there maybe a concrete example of something you've done lately that you maybe couldn't have done a year or 18 months ago?
Yeah, it's not real exciting, but having something parse like 8,000 page PDF document to extract some very specific information out of it. And with a few back and forth prompts, I got that done in 30 minutes or so. And if I'd had to do that manually, I probably wouldn't be here. I'd probably still be home doing that.
Yeah, I mean, kind of back to our, the place we started, does that change your definition of what good means for technology? Is that a good thing? And is that something that you see having a long life?
Good has to come from the perspective of what are you trying to accomplish? And I think that's something, I mostly do delivery, but sometimes I do pre-sales, meaning gathering requirements from customers. And if you haven't figured out what somebody's trying to accomplish, you're almost certain to miss the mark if you're jumping straight to, okay, we need 3 red widgets and 4 blue widgets and stuff like that. So, good is something when you figure out what you're trying to do, and then something that gets you there better, faster, more accurately, something like that.
Got it. What about you, Gus? You brought up the creativity piece. What have been some things you've been exploring?
Well, at a personal note, I would say this. I worked with at a foster home back at my country, and we have kids that have never touched a computer, and they feel scared when they see one. So what I've done is I've introduced them slowly to AI too, and there's this kid that comes to my mind that could not see well, but through AI, he's acquiring those skills to not be scared with the computer, and through prompting, he's been able to talk to the computer. And I always tell him, this is a tool. It's not what it says. It's not the holy truth. Let's put it that way. So you have to be conscious that you have, as I was saying at the beginning, the last word. And so he's getting to it, and his smile and his acceptance to it, that's where I see creativity coming through. In that spirit, that not also helping us as companies, but also helping the youngers come up with AI too in a more human way.
So it's kind of interesting. And Gus, you and Chris, obviously, you have kind of touched on that population, children, young people who are going to grow up really kind of natively this technology. I wonder if
kids are smart. Kids are very smart. I think we learn a lot. My children are actually patients at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and I'm very fortunate to be a part of their care, although not directly. And I think we learn a lot from our patients and how to improve our medical services, how to improve our clinical care, which directly relates to their outcomes being improved as well. And I think from an AI standpoint, I agree with Gus. It's not a replacement. We talk about AI being AI in an abundance. And how do we equip our caregivers to leverage AI to improve clinical outcomes? We have roughly 6,400 encounters every day from children, and some of those are the most complex cases in the world. And I think, how do we leverage not only the caregivers and the clinicians, but also the parents to them? When the kid goes home, they become the primary caregiver. How do we equip them to be better? When my wife or I take our kids into the hospital, all common sense just goes out the window. Like, I don't know what I'm asking. What do I do? I'm nervous. I'm scared. And so how do we leverage AI agents to be that family companion at home to continue to improve that child outcome? And I think leveraging our patients and our kids to say, what would you like out of your experience? What would you like when you go home? And how can we make that available to you when you come in and out of our health system?
Super interesting. And a follow-up to that, and I'll open it up to Andrea and Elliot too, but particularly with children, but to the all of our audiences, how are you managing and balancing some of the tension around the great possibility, creativity, but let's be honest, there's some skepticism, there's worry, there's some actual aversion to this stuff. How do you kind of, particularly with the children, how do you navigate that conversation?
You have to be close to them. You have to be honest. As been said here, children are smarter than us. They're like sponges, right?
Yeah.
So they can capture even more than us sometimes. And I agree we learn from them too. So we have to insert in them that value of transparency, honesty, and something that we haven't mentioned, the ethical part too. That we have to be ethical, because what we put out there, it goes to the world too, right?
Well, I mean, I will say, particularly when my kids were younger, not that there can't be a tiny bit of subterfuge when a younger kid wants a cookie or something, but in general, they don't have a lot of subterfuge when they're wanting something or they're looking for it. So it's kind of nice if you can find a way to show it to them where they have no, preset expectations, and see where it goes from there. I mean, we all look at things through the filters of our own life experiences, and I think it would probably surprise us if we took a step back and realized some of the things that we, just discount from past experiences. So that's interesting.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think we are building a different world for the new generations, because we are reducing frustration on the workplace through automation. We can tell the machines to do everything we don't want to do because it's a repetitive job, and we can let the users do what they can do their best, which is being human. And this is where the new generation should take advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that too. In the abstract of healthcare, I think when and where we are able to leverage AI for those sort of repeatable processes, oftentimes we feel like physicians use that as downtime. And I think when and where you take that away from them and then you focus their time more on those more complex, high-stress situations, it tends to lead to a lot of burnout. Yeah. So we are acutely aware of that, where we don't want to take away their downtime as much for an AI process to take over that. Because, as mundane as charting is in electronic medical record, that is some of their downtime. And I think that generally has led to a lot more burnout than in years past. So it's, again, finding that balance, what makes sense, and leveraging it the right way.
Yeah, it's interesting because, it's a different context, but in technology stuff, sometimes I find it interesting to do something that I've done 1,000 times, and I can do that kind of on autopilot. It's not stressful. It doesn't feel like I'm exerting myself. But yeah, if you're always doing something that's really, wild, unknown, and high stakes and stuff like that, that's going to put a whole lot more stress on you.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's very much a challenge, especially in the clinical space. And so to most of our frontline staff, I think they look forward to some of those mundane downtime tasks. And I think if we were to replace that with AI, general burnout, mistakes, fatigue, things like that is not what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So you guys have started to veer into, I think, a topic that I really wanted to bring up, that I think our audience is always really interested in hearing about. I'm always interested in hearing about is, how do you bring the organization along with you, especially in times of great change? And there's no argument that we're in a time of massive change right now. Most of us have never seen anything quite like this before. So I'd love to hear from each of you. And if you have some concrete examples, that'd be great. But how do we bring the team along with us? How do we bring our organization, the employees along when we are in the middle of this tension between, there's all this possibility, there's room for creativity, but we need to go really fast. We're going to automate things. It's changing our definition of good. And we have a lot of teammates, colleagues, employees that are wondering, what does this all mean for me? How do I participate in this? How does that future include me and value me? That's probably the question that comes up. I hear this weekly, maybe daily sometimes. So how are you all doing that? How you bring, especially as technology leaders in your organization, where we are, and I'm playing this role too, we're kind of the spokespeople, the advocates for this, but we have to do it in a way that gets everyone in the boat with us. So Andre, I'll start with you and maybe we'll make our way around.
I think people are not really used to bring themselves up to speed with technology because, yeah, it's true, technology is always evolving, but in the last 10 years, we progress a lot. And people should understand they have to spend their time because it's for their own future, it's for what they have to do on a daily basis. So, yeah, I feel the pain. Someone can be scared and don't know where to get to. But I'm pretty sure that if they stay on peace with the technology, everything will be fine at the end.
And so you mentioned fear. So how would you help someone in your team or an adjacent, how do you help them overcome it?
Training. They need to understand the technology we are using and how they can use the technology to improve their work and their future. We're not just talking about working time. We're also using technology for our personal time.
Well, I mean, I would say, and I've talked about this with a lot of people as it pertains to automation, but you can give people a lot of abstract concepts, but if you give something to them that is relevant to their job and, oh, I had this thing and I have to do it once a month and it takes me 4 hours and it's really boring, and you show them how to automate it and now it runs in 15 minutes and it's not as much of a pain. You really have to focus on, what's in it for them on that, as opposed to just staying with the abstract concepts.
Yeah, you need to bring real examples.
Yeah.
Some of the best training that we use is just ask it. Ask what it can do. What does your day look like? Ask it what it can do. And I think computer-based training is one thing, getting people exposed to it, getting hands-on, but I think in general, some of the best training we've had is just ask it. And then those end up being some of our most power users.
I think also is being there hand to hand. Because sometimes they think that since we're in IT, they feel scared to ask because they may feel that they don't have the same capacity as us, but we have to let them know that we started somewhere too. We didn't learn AI just like that because we're in IT. So in our case, in my company, what we've done is we have an AI console every month.
Yeah.
So, and we invite everybody to come in, ask your questions. There's no, as we say, there's no dumb question. Ask them, because that's the way we all learn at some point, not only AI, but IT itself. We weren't put in our positions right now because of what we learned overnight. It took us a process. The same thing with AI. AI takes a process to learn and how it's going to help our life day to day, not only at work, but personal.
Well, I would say there's another element to that too, which is as technology leaders, yeah, we want to move things forward, but then you also get sometimes what I would say would be some wild, unfounded optimism of what can this do? So we also have to have a role of dialing that back. Sometimes it's like, well, AI can change the flat tire on my car. Well, maybe eventually, but I think you're getting a little ahead of yourself, and let's focus on this. And it can do these things, but we don't have the data that it needs to make those kind of decisions. So sometimes it's steering people away from it. Sometimes it's advocating for it. It's a different kind of role there.
I love that. I think we've all found ourselves being more like the voice of reason, playing the role of pragmatist.
Yeah.
In the middle of all this, because there's a lot of churn and crash. And Gus, just back to you had a brilliant line earlier about at the end of the day, like humans we still need to be the last word, and I think that's a really important role, certainly for all of us who are technology leaders to play. And the other thing you made me think of is that there are new roles, right? There's new opportunity for creativity. Some of the things you talked about, I think, Chris, are great examples. There's new opportunities for mastery, new roles to be governing the pragmatic brain around this stuff. So I think there's a ton of possibility, but it is on us, I think, more and more to play that role of leadership. And this always goes amazingly fast. So I'm going to try to kind of bring us to a close here. Maybe just we'll go around and given everything we talked about, the rate of change, the pace, the creativity, the opportunity, art of the possible, what's the one thing you're most excited about in the next year or two, given the state that we're in? And the idea to kind of redefine or put our own stamp on what good means. What are you most excited about?
Yeah, I think for me, we've touched on it, is there is sort of a negative connotation around AI, and I think it's up to us to be part of that conversation to make it good. What does AI mean, and how do we make it good? And I think over time we will show people, and we will use proof of concepts, and we will use real world examples on how to do that. But I think what I'm most excited about is being able to innovate and push the envelope of healthcare, especially in the research discovery space. Cincinnati Children's is one of the largest research institutions from a biobank perspective. And I think we're one sort of LLM away from finding a whole new cure for whatever rare diseases are out there, or a drug discovery. And I think being able to leverage AI, being able to leverage machine learning and training LLMs, and being one of the largest organizations with the biobank facility, we're only one step away from changing the world and how we improve outcomes for children and adults around the world. So it's really exciting from my perspective.
It'll be fun to watch.
From a policy standpoint, I'm going to wave Cisco's flag a little bit, because early on I was very favorably impressed with some of their stances on AI, governance and, guardrails and things like that. And I know that doesn't sound like something that would be exciting, but there aren't a lot of people that haven't watched Terminator and wonder how far are we from Skynet, So anything that you can talk about how you can keep these things from running amok while still doing good things for you, and have good policies on, where the heck are you getting your data from? because, an AI can provide you wildly inaccurate information if you're giving it a bad information source. So
That's
all of those kinds of things. But I think that's where a lot of the fear comes from. And I think we do people a disservice by trying to do, these aren't the droids you're looking for on that. We kind of have to take that head on and say, okay, we're aware of this, and this is what we're doing to try and address those sorts of concerns.
That's great. It's profoundly important. I think it's one of the reasons we're so proud to be part of things like Project Glasswing and to be kind of on the forefront of that. It's something we did responsibility we take really seriously because we are going to need more of this, not less. So it's a great point.
I'm looking forward to the creativity we were talking about at the beginning, and also seeing what's coming. Also, I'm excited on that part, but also in the medical part, as you stated, to see what's going to bring to us, and that we maintain it ethical, that we provide the information that's needed to the AI that's appropriate, and with that human side that I talked at the beginning of our conversation, because I think that's a key part that we should not forget. We're the ones ingesting, to use a term, that AI, and we have to be conscious of what we're putting in there, because as I know all of us have read, it says garbage in, garbage out. So we have to be very careful of what we're putting in there, but excited to see what's coming soon.
From a technical perspective, I want to talk with my network. I know that's something we can already do because Cisco has already proven that with AI Canvas, we can collect information from across all our devices, we can interact, we can ask for configuration, we can also ask for troubleshooting. This doesn't mean that engineers are lazy and they don't want to do their job, but they can focus on more high-level tasks. And I think one of the good points with Cisco AI is that it's something developed internally. They are not relying on third party. So it's much easier to train the model and be focused on what it really has to do.
I will just add plus 100 to all of that and say, I think what I'm most excited about is the fact that we don't know yet. We don't know all the answers to these things yet. And that creates a whole new frontier for all of us, and a frontier where I think we've defined today that we're going to need creativity, we're going to need transparency, we're going to need some pragmatism and governance. But the art of the possible is more wide open than I think we've ever seen before. And I think you all provided some, just some hints at the kind of real goodness that we're going to be able to create in the world with collaboration and partnership. So again, gentlemen, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate the time. I'm grateful for the conversation. And that brings us to the close of another Tech Unscripted, where I hope we fulfilled the promise of really interesting conversation with interesting guests from really interesting companies doing really interesting things. Timely topic, a great topic. And I hope you all walk away with maybe some interesting questions of your own around the definition of good. Thank you. We'll see you again soon.